All right, episode 10. This is the final episode of season 1 of Atlanta. We really do seem to be opening a lot of episodes off on Earn waking up. I feel like that
hmm
happens a lot, or at least a lot of scenes.
This one's called The Jacket.
Yeah,
So,
because Earn is looking for his jacket pretty much the whole episode,
yeah.
which he lost after a party, and he got very drunk last night.
So we'll get into that, but we're first obligated to tell you or ask you to support
Right.
us.
Yeah. We got a Patreon. We got 3 tiers. The first tier, that'll get you a shout out from us. We'll thank you on the show. Second tier, that'll get you access to episodes 2 weeks ahead of time. So, you could be listening to season 2, episode 2 right now. And then, of course, the third tier, that'll get you access to bonus episodes. I think we're looking to do Guava Island up next or soon, hopefully. That's the movie that or film that a lot of the people who worked on Atlanta also worked on. I had never heard of it before we started this show, but I'm excited to get that done.
hmm I still
But yeah,
haven't seen
anyway,
it, but that's on my list of things to watch.
yeah. But yeah, so final episode of season 1, and I think this is an excellent episode overall. Like despite whether regard, it's interesting because it doesn't feel like the finale of a season,
My
but I like
sentiments
that about it.
exactly. You
I
like
think a
that?
lot of shows really try to like wrap everything up that happened in the past season with their final episode, or at least kind of the final arc. But Atlanta isn't really like that.
Yeah, I actually I didn't think this was one of the better episodes. It was
Yeah.
interesting in many ways from the character development standpoint, but I thought the same thing. Like it was a curious way to end a season. I mean,
I guess what I'll say is I really liked the overall feel of the episode. I think that the directing and camera work in this episode is some of the best. Like that, I didn't remember it being this good the first time I watched it, but I'll get into more of that later. You can explain what you were talking about.
well, I mean, before I dive into it, I mean, the summary, my takeaway is uh, that it was mostly character development about Earn and his financial situation, his
Okay.
his difficulties with his job or his evolving relationship as the manager for Paperboy, as well as him struggling to try to support Earn and Lottie. But the but
Mhm.
the ending it felt a little anticlimactic, because of this episode long search for the jacket, and what we end up realizing was it really wasn't all about the jacket, but I won't give it all away. But yeah, I mean, most of these
Oh,
Hulu
give it
or
away. They've already seen the episode.
that's true. Most of these most of these Hulu series or Netflix series, at the end of a season, there's always something that it's like a cliffhanger or something that makes you want to come back. But this one really didn't feel that way to me.
Yeah.
And so, all right,
I agree. A lot of shows are like that. I don't think that that necessarily makes a show better or worse. I think that like a lot of shows, I think a big issue with a lot of shows and a lot of like media is just that like they go on for too long, or they seem made to go on for a long time even if they don't necessarily. And I think you see this with a lot of like Netflix series that get canceled after like one season. Uh they feel like they were made for a lot more material. Like the first season seems like it's made for a lot more material than what you actually get, which would make sense if you're going to see more of it, but then it doesn't show up, right? Or the inverse of that, which is that a show is made with not as much content, or seemingly like content that would be enough for one season as like a nice concise story, but then it become whether it becomes popular or for whatever reason it just goes on for a lot longer. Maybe that was just the plan the whole time, by on the part of the showrunners, that it just stretches out way longer than it feels like it should, and it just doesn't have like the content to like fill out that space, in my opinion.
I think
um
I mean,
and
given the sort of
That's not to
depressed.
say a cliffhanger is always bad. When it's done right, if a show is
Agreed.
constructed
Yeah.
to have a cliffhanger and then it follows through on that, then it's great.
I was just going to say, given the sort of depressing ending, uh, like it struck me that, like, if anything, the tone of this final episode was such that you might not want to come back and watch it. But I would say that this is so good. The whole season was so well done that that's not what I felt at all. Like, if you had only watched this one episode in isolation, you'd be left
I mean,
saying,
I guess, but like, who's watching only the last
yeah,
episode?
that's right. That's right.
I don't know.
So
I get maybe if it
I'm just
was,
saying that the creators were brave enough to make this the final episode, or they were
yeah.
confident enough that the viewers were going to come back, given how strong the whole season was
Yeah,
overall.
I do wonder if they. Well, the thing is, I do wonder if they thought or if they knew that they would have a second season at this time, because there
Mm.
was a 2-year gap between season 1 and season 2,
Ah, good
and
point.
and that's not to say that like that necessarily means that there was a gap before. It's very possible that season 2 is greenlit like midway into season 1, or shortly, or because there's also a gap between production of a show and when a show starts airing. So it's possible that they could have gotten confirmation midway through season 1 actually airing, but after they had finished like making the show. So it's hard to say overall. But I mean, I'm sure there are some
That's a good
articles you
question.
could hunt down to
It would be
figure it out.
interesting to know if they
Yeah.
left open the possibility that this
Mhm.
was the way to end it, like
Yeah,
after
because
one
sometimes the
season.
studio knows that they have something gold on their hands, and
Mhm.
sometimes they are like hesitant and they want to see it become successful first, and then they greenlight a second season, or and any number of reasons could prevent or cause further installments of a series to happen.
I actually, the more I thought about the last couple podcasts we did, and like some of the sort of uh, like controversial takes that they had on black culture and on you know uh, like what could be more easily described as racism in certain situations or certain scenes. Like there were so many scenes throughout season one where they really didn't fit the typical narrative in the mainstream media, and so I wonder if season one of Atlanta didn't get its just due because it really didn't fit the narrative at the time. 2016 was, a time when just sort of the, the woke culture was just beginning to take off, and everything was about, um, uh, you know, white supremacy. And,
I mean, I can see that. I would have to look into. I haven't looked into the ratings of season 1 as of yet, and I would need to kind of go. And of course, I wasn't watching it when it was first coming out, so I don't think I have as good of a pulse on the reaction towards season 1 when it first came out.
uh,
Um, but my general impression from reading forums and comments about it and reading articles that talked about it, which were published at the time, is that it was generally positively received and people considered it to be maybe not like groundbreaking, but
mhm.
certainly in the vein of a lot of other of Donald Glover's projects, definitely like uh challenging certain norms that had been that some other people, or trotting into territories that a lot of other people might not really know how to or might be scared to, with the level of like grace that he seems capable of doing it with, um which I think is generally how people look back on this season and the show as a whole. Even now, it's still ongoing, but I feel like that kind of attitude has upheld as the show's gone on.
But do you find that your fellow students uh, are aware of uh, this series? Like the
I mean,
people I work with
I've
don't
talked to
really
some of
know
my
too
I've
much
talked to
about
some
it.
of my friends about it. And they've said that yeah, they've heard of the show, or some people have said they watched a couple episodes. A friend of mine, she even started watching it when I was like gushing
Oh yeah,
to a bunch of my friends how good the show is.
I'm just
It's
surprised it hasn't gotten much more traction in a much
Yeah.
wider audience.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
it's that what it's I think that highly of it, at least
yeah.
how it's been
Oh, yeah, I
done.
mean, part of that I think is because of how just kind of strange it is in general.
Yeah.
Things that things are outside of the outside. The other thing that I think is decently important to keep in mind is that Donald Glover is mostly known as a musician. I think that's what he's
Hmm.
most famous for, and not as much a director actor. Although he is also very much known for those things. And then also that yeah, the show is weird, but then also that this happens with a lot of shows. As a series continues with its like seasons and stuff, the viewership tends to consolidate.
Hmm.
In what I mean by that is that, you'll see like season 1 of a show and it has a lot of attention and a lot of people are paying attention to it, and then season 2 rolls around and the people who weren't as big of a fan of season 1, maybe they disliked it, or maybe they just kind of didn't really care so much about it even if they were interested in it. They're probably not going to come around for season 2, right? But then the people who did watch it, they are going to want to come back for season 2, right? But then the thing is, a second season isn't going to pull in that same audience as the first season did, because like who's going to start with season 2, right? Like unless it's like, I don't know, The Simpsons or something, or like SpongeBob. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like catching on to these like, one episode and done sort of sitcoms that have been running forever. At that point, it kind of doesn't matter where you jump on. But with Atlanta, it's clearly a show with a much more like continuous narrative across, and a lot of shows. Like, I feel like those like this is shows that are like you can jump on at any point are kind of the exception to the rule, in my opinion. But
There are definitely standalone episodes in Atlanta too. I mean,
well, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not
But like they
entirely
serve the
continuous.
greater. Yeah, but like, yeah, it's not entirely continuous, but it clearly tells a continuous story. And like, the point I'm making is that I don't see anybody like what like he seeing a promotional material for season 2, 3, 4, or seeing a clip of it on YouTube, or hearing somebody talk about it and being like, I'm gonna jump on at season 2, 3, or 4, right? Like, you're
Hmm.
gonna go back and start at season 1, and then you basically get filtered. You filter the fans of how interested are they as the seasons progress, and just as a natural course of action, I think that means that less people are going to have seen season 4 than season 1, and also that the biggest name attached to this show is Donald Glover, and he didn't receive his most widespread acclaim until 2018, which was when This Is America dropped. That was his, I think that still is what he's most famous for. And
That was
the show,
between season 1 and 2.
that was I think right around when season 2 dropped.
Uh-huh.
And season 1 started in 2016, which was a couple years before that. So by the time that Donald Glover became like his most famous, I would say, season 1 had already been out for a couple years, and TV shows just kind of lose, unless they're really spectacular and influential, they kind of lose relevance after that amount of
But
time.
season 2 was already in the can when Donald Glover hit it really big.
Most likely. I mean, this is not to say that he wasn't famous already. He had already, at the time of season 1, he had already done his Awaken My Love album, which had Redbone, which I think was his previously most popular song. And I can't remember if it hit like number 1 on the top 100, but and he was also very well known for his role as Troy Barnes on Community. And
Well,
and
yeah,
this is not to say that Atlanta was totally underground. Like, people also knew him very much for Atlanta, but I'm just kind of
well,
speculating as to why maybe not this show is extremely mainstream. My best guess,
yeah.
though, is just that it's weird.
Well, I think it's interesting the timeline you just laid out there, because I wonder if the
And I'm not
network,
an expert on this stuff.
like
But
Hulu, it first appeared on Hulu. Is that season 1?
I
Um,
don't know when it first appeared on Hulu. It's a good
well,
question.
if there was that delay, and that delay coincided, or the interval was when Donald Glover became super popular, it probably influenced Hulu's decision to sign him on for additional seasons of Atlanta.
That's possible. I mean, I think season 3 only just finished like recently, so there was even an even bigger gap between seasons 2 and 3.
Hmm.
I think that was mostly due to Donald Glover being interested in doing other creative endeavors. That's just kind of
Yeah,
how it
his
comes off to
schedule.
me. Um, yeah,
Okay,
I
well,
think
we should dive
yeah,
into
yeah.
we should
We
dive
should
into the final
yeah, yeah,
episode
yeah. I
here.
guess I'll kind of get into what I meant when I said that I really like the directing and camera work of this episode.
Hmm.
So in this episode, we follow Ern, and he's like looking for his jacket the whole time, and he goes to a bunch of different locations throughout Atlanta looking for this and talking to a bunch of different people. And in doing so, he, I feel we meet a bunch of different characters and get very brief glimpses into their lives. But the thing is, like, there will constantly be these scenes of Ern where he picks up the phone to talk to somebody else, or he's just like pondering where could my jacket be or something like that, and the camera just kind of focuses in on him, and then the background and everything else just kind of becomes a blur.
Hmm.
And and it happens most obviously when he's on the phone with the Uber driver from the previous night, and Darius and Al are having a conversation on the couch in the field, the iconic location for all three of them. And Ern, he walks off, and the camera starts off focused on Al and Darius, and then it changes the aperture, I think, setting to then focus in the field of view, shifts over to Ern. So the camera is now looking like through Darius and Al and focusing in on Ern, and their conversation gets all fuzzy. Oh, got a notification. And their conversation gets all fuzzy, and you only really hear Ern. And it's obviously meant to be sort of his point of view, and that happens again. That happens right at the beginning of the episode when he wakes up in his and he's got this other buddy who owns the house that they were partying at the previous night, who's saying like, "Hey, you got to get out of here! Somebody lit my trash can on fire," and Ern is just saying like, "Hey, have you seen my jacket?" And he says like, "Hey, you got to get out of here," and Ern's like, "Oh, it was like navy blue," and they're just having two completely different conversations, and
Yeah.
like it happens all the time in the episode, and I think it's just meant to, and the camera work I think helps with this, but I think it's just meant to aid to this sense of like dissociation,
Hmm.
that like Ern is just totally focused on something else going on, and meanwhile all of these other people who, some of them we've met before in the episode or in this season, and some of them are just new characters that we, are just getting passing glimpses of. But either way, like Ern is just kind of not in it at all. It happens again to Al when they're parked, and he kind of gets this like sixth sense where he's like senses danger going on as they're waiting for this Uber driver to like come and drop off the jacket. Um, and and you get kind of the reverse of the previous scene where Ern is on the phone and he's talking to this producer who is trying to contact Paperboy for going on a tour, and you just and we just hear Ern talking in the background, just sort of muffled out, while Al is just focused on, he's looking through the windshield and he's
Hmm.
hearing the rustling of the leaves and stuff, and he's obviously on edge. And I think that all of that is supposed to just like make the viewer so aware that like these characters constantly feel like there's something. And I suspect that if I were to like go rewatch season 1 again with this in mind, I feel like I would probably notice more instances of this. But I just think that like these are characters who are constantly aware that or maybe not aware, but that constantly have something else that they could be paying attention to.
Well, it just
They're
feels more realistic for the viewer too,
Yeah, I
because
mean, it's a very real feeling.
like
Like I'm really
it's
busy
not
right
just
now.
like
The school year just started back up.
it's not just a script, like one character with one line of dialogue,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
Like I said, this is happening all throughout the episode.
yeah. So and
It's a very
that makes
atmospheric
that has a very
feeling.
realistic feel, because that's what happens in real life. You're never just like, if you're in a group, if there's two or more people, uh, oftentimes there's more than one sound, and maybe even more than one person talking at the same time, and there's your senses are subconsciously picking up on things that are going on around you. The
Yeah.
the viewer doesn't see that through a TV screen, which is
Hmm.
has a limited field of view, but yeah, the cameraman can do certain things, and the
Yeah.
audio engineer can do certain
Hmm.
things
Yeah.
to make
And
it
well, I
more
guess what I'd
realistic.
say, I do think that there is like a greater purpose to this beyond just making it feel realistic, which is that in interviews and a lot of people who talk about this show online on their own channels, um, make the point of Atlanta, the city itself, feeling alive, right?
Mm,
And what I mentioned earlier about that sense of atmosphere, you know, I feel like this episode in particular is really showing us these characters that are kind of just like making their way through a living, bustling city that has its own problems and
right.
everybody else around them. Yeah, I've made this point before that like everybody in, this hood of Atlanta that we've mostly become acclimated throughout this season are people who are really concerned with themselves and themselves primarily, and like that's totally justified. um but it feels as though these characters like are unaware of just the great sometimes occasionally they become aware, but like everybody is really focused in on their own lives, their own problems, what they like. Ern and Van, like he has that one scene with Van where he like hands her the money and she's like, "What's this?" And he says like, "Oh, it's that thing we always need." And it's
Yeah,
just like illustrating how both of them, like it's gotten to the point where they're joking about like how desperate they are for money, and we talked before about how Van and Ern are constantly making reference to Lottie and how like anytime they're going from one place to another place, it's like, oh, I'm coming home from picking up Lottie, or I'm going back to home to take care of Lottie, or that kind of thing. Um, and then the character like at the very beginning of this episode is he's having he's having a quote unquote conversation with Ern, but Ern is looking for his jacket. Meanwhile, this guy is trying to clean up his house, and his girlfriend is just hungry, and he's like, and like everybody's just kind of like ignoring each other's needs or what they're trying to get at, because they're so caught up in their own lives and they almost can't afford to really focus on anything else. And I think that that's, I mean, like you said, a very realistic feeling. And to see it displayed in a TV show is not only really impressive, but it again kind of gives like the city itself a character in it almost.
mhm. Well, so I can just speed through the summary of what happened
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean, this
want.
almost the entire episode is just Ern looking for his jacket.
Yeah, so he leaves the neighbor's house, and you know we're immediately made aware that this jacket is important to Ern. He passes several people on the street who are like apparently getting free chicken sandwiches. There's people dressed like
Oh
cows.
yeah, is that a Chick-fil-A thing?
It is, yeah. There was
Okay,
a commercial of
I
like a
suspected as much.
cow. The commercial, the premise of the commercial was like these cows were trying to convince people to eat chicken instead of
Oh
burgers.
yeah, well I know that. That's kind of Chick-fil-A's whole marketing
Yeah,
scheme. I was just wondering if like this particular event where like the one guy said, "Hey, it's free chicken sandwich day." And then we immediately smash cut to Ern like walking to his next location except he's eating a chicken sandwich, which is like, yeah, of course he would
yeah,
go for a
yeah.
free chicken sandwich. He's poor.
And I think Chick-fil-A is pretty big in Atlanta. They may even be
Yeah.
headquartered there, but I think
I think they're bigger in the South.
I'm making that up. But
I don't know.
anyway,
I'm
so
not really super
so
good
Ern
on like
walks
American geography and
Ern walks up to this
chains.
strip club where he knows he was the previous night, finishing his chicken sandwich, and he's haggling with the bouncer. He wants to get in there to look for his jacket. The bouncer wants to charge him $10. Eventually, Ern concedes and gives him $10. Goes in there. There's a waitress that he encounters and starts talking with. The waitress recognizes him or realizes that he's Paperboy's manager, and the waitress is trying to like convince Ern to hire her as a dancer. Ern's just trying to get details about the strippers or the dancers that they were interacting with the night before, and there's this comical exchange where the the waitress is trying to get Ern to describe the dancer and like describe how big her tits were, and
Yeah.
and Ern is like uncomfortable with this, and the
Well, to me, Ern doesn't seem uncomfortable. He's just like he's just like tired.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it seems like he's perfectly willing to have the conversation. He's just like a little frustrated that he has to.
Well, we've seen this
Like,
before too, like him like not being able to sort of converse in the the sort of crass culture, the dance club culture, or the in this case, describing, you know, the physical appearance of a stripper. He's like, I don't.
I
What did he say?
guess.
He said, I don't know the titty median here because the waitress
Yeah.
he at one point he points out a passing waitress, and
Yeah.
he said she kind of looked like her, and the waitress is like, oh, this is
Those
after
titties
Ern
ain't big.
described, yeah, after Ern described the
Yeah.
person he was looking for as having big titties, and then the waitress is like, those titties ain't big, and Ern says, whatever, I don't know the titty median here, but I just thought that was comical.
Yeah.
But anyway, he ends up leaving. He doesn't really get anywhere. He leaves the club. He reviews some cell phone camera video footage from the previous night before, where he sees himself in the back of an Uber wearing the jacket, but the footage from the strip club, he does not have the jacket on. So now he's got it in his head that, oh, he must have left it in the Uber. He joins Al and Darius, who are on the couch outside of the apartment eating sunflower seeds. They talk about the night before. Ern recounts how upset the neighbor was with him, and Al admits to stunting, and we get this
Hmm.
word stunting again, which Ern objects
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
He says we shouldn't be showing off before we really have any money,
Hmm.
and Al's like, "How you suck the fun out of everything," is what his quote was. Like, he kind of comes down on Ern for being a party pooper. Darius, in typical Darius fashion, like I said, he identifies black people's number one problem is not knowing how to have fun, which uh, Ern really disagrees with. He's like, I really disagree with that being black people's number one problem, which
Yeah.
which which actually they could have made more out of that, but I don't think that was really the focus of the episode. I just wrote a little note to myself that dialogue right there like begs the question: what is the number one problem for Black people? But I don't think this episode was any kind of social commentary on that. But it was kind of another example of this kind of curious exchange between Darius and Ern, where Darius will say something goofy like that, and Ern is just like either totally confounded, or he's just like confused, or he's like in
Yeah.
disagreement with him. Uh, so anyway, Darius replies with some sort of convoluted statement about money being about spending money being time well spent, and this even confuses himself. Darius just kind of his dialogue just kind of like fades out, like he has a confused look on his own face, like which again is comical. Uh, so then Ern borrows Al's phone to call the Uber driver. Al and Darius have this conversation in the background, and that's the scene that you were describing, where
Yeah.
you can actually hear some conversation, and they're just talking about sunflower seeds and different
Hmm.
flavors of sunflower seeds, while Ern is trying to get this Uber driver on the phone, which he apparently does, but the Uber driver wants $50 to return the jacket, in other words, to
Hmm.
bring the jacket to Ern, but Ern doesn't want to pay the $50. He gets Al to drive him to retrieve the jacket. And in the process of this exchange, we actually find out that they know the Uber driver. They identify him as Fidel, or F Money. So there is, even though the viewer has no idea who this person is, apparently at least Al knows who he
Yeah.
is. Um, Ern asks Al to drive him. Al reluctantly agrees. They all go off in the car, and then in the next scene, they're parked out in this relatively quiet neighborhood, waiting for this F Money guy. Al describes it as a Negro stakeout, which if you've seen the movie 48 Hours, Darius tries to draw a reference to this 48 Hours movie.
I have not.
It's just, it's an old movie about these two white cops who are on a stakeout. I honestly don't remember who the perpetrators were in the movie, but I think Darius is making some sort of weird comparison. Like, what if the cast of 48 Hours was all black? And he's like, would this even work?
Yeah.
I think the implication being, you don't typically see black cops trying to arrest white guys in a movie, but I don't know whether that's true or not. But
I mean,
anyway,
I can't think of a time it's happened off the top of my head.
I think
No, I'm not super big into police cop
me
dramas.
neither. I mean, there's plenty of movies we could probably cite, but it's not worth breaking down. There's also this phone call that Ern gets from somebody named Senator K, who's asking if Paperboy wants to go on tour with them. And again, this is sort of happening in the background while Al is kind of looking suspiciously around the neighborhood. And I thought this was kind of interesting because I think this was the second time that we see that Al has some sort of heightened sense of perception when it comes to like feeling.
When was the other time this happened?
Yeah, when
or has it yet to happen?
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something that happens in a future episode. But Al kind of is more sort of street savvy, and he's just looking around. I think he's wondering why it's so quiet. And sure enough, as soon Al's like, okay, we're getting out of here. He starts the car up, but then immediately a police van like comes screeching in front of them, and some heavily armed Atlanta police officers jump out of the car. They demand that the three of them get out of the car, and they're being frisked and interrogated by these cops. They want to know if any of them know Fernando Arroyo, who apparently is a drug dealer. And Darius responds, "You mean F Money?" So apparently these cops are there to arrest F Money, who's a drug dealer. And I actually made another note here, like to discuss whether or not the cops had probable cause to detain the three. Like, I was kind of expecting to see some sort of police brutality theme emerge here, but that's not really, I think, what they were going for.
You mean you didn't see that?
Well, I mean, they definitely
not when they shot the guy.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean anti-black brutality, but yeah, I was surprised because
was F Money not black also?
No, he was Hispanic. Fernando Arroyo.
Okay.
And he had long curly hair.
I didn't get a good look at him, I guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was Hispanic. But again, like, this is an example of sort of like not crafting the typical stereotype of cops gunning down unarmed black men, which maybe at this time there was that wasn't really in the zeitgeist. Like, this was 2016, so this was before Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. But
no, Black Lives Matter was a thing before 2020.
But before 2016, when this was filmed?
Oh yeah.
Well, it was
Black Lives Matter has been a thing for a long time.
Well, then
it's had moments in history where it's flared up more. Usually because
you're saying Black Lives Matter was in existence before 2016?
Oh, certainly. Maybe not. I mean, it definitely didn't have the same form it didn't take the same form that it does now, but they were definitely
question that, but I mean, it definitely wasn't sort of in the public consciousness when they filmed this.
Maybe not the white public consciousness.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough, but the point is, like, you would have expected, if they were trying to make a point about about Atlanta cops brutalizing black men, that it would have been a black guy running down the street that they gunned down, and not a
Yeah, I
Hispanic
would
guy.
say that. Yeah, now knowing that it's a Hispanic guy, I would say it sounds like this is a point of Atlanta cops brutalizing. Uh, yeah, you could say all minorities. You could say also Hispanics. It could just be like, Hispanics are not immune. It's not just black
Immune.
people. You could say it's. I think more likely it's a criticism of the war on drugs.
Maybe,
Because
yeah.
we're not really sure. Like if these guys, like we said, Al and Darius, they seem to know him, and these guys, at least our main characters, they only smoke weed. We've only seen them smoke weed so far,
Yeah.
and weed seems to be by far the most common uh,
Yeah,
drug
you
of
would not
choice
expect like
from
gun
from
wielding
people.
cops to be shooting
Yeah.
down a weed dealer.
Well, I mean, we've seen crazier stuff happen in the show, and I mean, if there was,
I mean,
if the point to be made was that, Atlanta cops or cops in general are brutalizing. Uh, when was marijuana legal? I don't. No, marijuana was not legal. I don't think for recreational use in Georgia at the
no,
time
no,
of this episode or this season.
that's
Um,
it.
and obviously before then, the further back you go, the more extreme police treatment of drug holders gets. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it
I see this
it's
I see this as a
interesting.
pretty simple, like, this guy is a drugs dealer. He's not like an arms dealer or something. Like, he wasn't dangerous to the cops. Like, the worst thing that they risked by not shooting him was that he got away. But, like, I mean, if you've seen any person try to run away from cops with cars on foot, like, they never happens.
Yeah, I
So
think that
they
was what
definitely
struck
did not
me.
have to shoot him in this situation. They could have gotten to him
I just
in
found
other
it. I found
ways.
it interesting that they the creators of the show appeared to be making a point that the cops, like, number one, they were detaining Darius and Al and Ern sort of
Yeah, that
in
seems
an
like racial
unjustified
profiling.
way.
Yeah.
Um, but they and they also, shot down this guy who, okay, he was a drug dealer. We really don't know much more than that. Like,
Yeah.
there's it seemed like an unjustified shooting, but it does sort of beg the question, like you know is that even a possibility? Like, is that even legal? Like, you wonder if cops are really allowed to do that. Like, they
Yeah, you
presumably
do
would
wonder.
they presumably would have a warrant to arrest this guy. I mean, let's just assume that these cops were staking him out. They had a warrant. They were gonna arrest this guy. Does does
I
that
feel
do
like
they
this
have
show
justification to
overall,
shoot somebody
I
who's running
okay,
away
like,
like that?
I mean, you could make that assumption, but I feel like this show is clearly all. This is another thing about this final episode, is that I think it's mostly following through with a lot of ideas that have been already touched upon in the season prior.
Uh-huh.
Um, which is why I said it didn't so much feel like a final episode as so much as just another episode in the season, which is something I like about it. But point being that at no other point, I feel like I can't remember any other point in season one where cops are portrayed as in like a, I won't say in just a positive manner, but cops are always kind of considered like misusing their power, and like I see no reason why like the attitude of the show would kind of shift for this one scene just to you know
Yeah.
to
I
give these cops some probable cause for gunning down this drug dealer
I
who,
was just
like,
looking.
based on the context of the entire rest of the season, it seems like it's a pretty fair assumption to say that these cops didn't have a warrant, or even if they did, that, clearly the gunfire and the manners that they used to detain him, quote unquote, were clearly not necessary,
Yeah.
and as such with the holding, Al, Ern, and Darius. Yeah, it seems like pretty in line with what we've seen from cops throughout the rest of the season,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. There's, but I mean, I find it striking that, again, the perpetrator in this case was not necessarily black. So again, like
I mean,
the
we've
mixed
yeah.
identity issue is coming into play again.
Eh, I
So
mean, what's the identity issue here?
well, it's the identity of the drug dealer who apparently who it's not entirely clear, but I mean we see that he's a
Is the
brown.
issue that he identifies as Mexican?
No,
or
not
is
that
the
kind of
or is the issue that the
identification.
cops are profiling him based on
I'm just saying it's not stereotypical. Uh, that whoever wrote this scene didn't do the stereotypical
I mean,
thing.
I feel like I feel like ever since like Breaking Bad, Mexican drug dealers and probably even before that has been a stereotype.
That's true, Mexican, but
I feel yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like Mexican drug dealers dealing drugs to poor black people has been an idea
it was
at the very
interesting
least. I don't
the
know how true it is, but I think it's been like a a what's the word,
trope.
filmography trope
Yeah.
for long before Atlanta started up.
Well, the three main characters, their response was kind of interesting too because they initially were like, "Ooh, did you have to use that many bullets?" And then,
Yeah.
but then like later they in the car they think it's
Hmm.
cool. Like what they just
Yeah.
experienced was cool. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
something.
And I was gonna say, this is another thing that I think I've touched on before is that Atlanta um, puts its characters through these like really crazy things. Some of them like completely surreal that like don't seem to be happening in reality but still have a profound effect on them, and some things are real life events that are just that would be traumatic to anybody, and it shows them after the fact just kind of hanging around, like not really seeming all that affected by it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've heard from other people that that's like a common thing to happen with a lot of like people who are acclimated to really poor standards of living, or who are like marginalized in a lot of ways. Apparently there was a study or two done that showed that kids who had grown up in like these poor neighborhoods had shown similar signs of like PTSD to like war veterans.
Yeah,
um
their stress
and
level is higher.
exactly, with such high stress levels constantly surrounding you, you can't afford to react super like strongly to every terrible thing that happens in your vicinity, because terrible things are happening in your vicinity constantly, and if you
Yeah,
gave all of them as much attention, and this is kind of what I was saying about how these characters kind of can't afford to like give every little detail and issue that's going on with other people around them the time of day to like really process, is because partially they have their own shit going on in their own life, but also if they paid attention to all of their friends and even just people they saw on just passing by like get shot by the police, if you like let that stick in your mind for so long, like you'd become suicidal. It'd be hell. And so a lot of people, I think, have this like tendency, and I think it's a very natural human reaction to just kind of like block it out and act like it's not as serious as it is, or that it's not affecting you in the way that it is.
yeah. So so uh, while the drug dealer is lying dead on the ground, there's one cop sort of kneeling over him, and there's another cop who's trying to just radio in, what the situation. And Ern approaches that guy, and he's trying to convince him to look in the pockets, the guy's jacket pockets, because we didn't spell it out clearly, but like Ern sees the guy running down the street, and he's like, "Oh, that's my
Right, yeah, and he's
jacket."
wearing Ern's
He's
jacket.
wearing Ern's jacket, and and then the guy gets gunned down, and anyway, he tries to convince one of the cops to search the pockets. So so now we're given the sense that, oh, it's something more than the jacket. There's something in the pocket that Ern is interested in. We don't really know what that is at this point, but the viewer is led to believe that the jacket maybe is less important than what was in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next scene, the three are driving away. They don't get arrested. That they're basically driving away, and this is when they're having this conversation about like, wow, that was crazy. But Darius is and cool, and and Ern admits that he's not even mad about the jacket, um, but he's clearly depressed. Like I remember
Hmm.
thinking, wow, he's really bummed out. Like initially, I thought, man, he really loved that jacket, but then it's like, wait a minute, maybe there's something more to this that we don't know.
Well,
Anyway,
he asked to check in the pocket, so I think
yeah,
immediately it's pretty clear. I mean, I was initially it was interesting because when I first watched this and I was thinking, "Oh, he just really wants that jacket for
mm,
some reason." I wasn't really thinking more deeply. And then and then F Money gets shot wearing it. I was thinking that how the scene was going to play out is that Ern would be really upset about the jacket getting holes in it, but he wouldn't really be too phased about F Money getting shot because he sees that shit happen all the time. And just
mm,
like I said, he kind of just blocks it out. But his jacket, he really cares about that. And now it's like it's going to be in like police custody or something, and it's got holes in it, and it's never maybe it was a really like meaningful thing that his grandfather gave him or something like that. But no, it's the key that was in the pocket. It wasn't actually the jacket.
yeah. I actually at this point, like I should say until this point in the scene, I remember thinking this is kind of like what's so great about this episode? Like Ern looking for a jacket. I mean, it seems seems like the basis for an uninteresting plot. But again, you start to get a little more insight as to maybe there's something more to this jacket search than what we first thought. So anyway, they get out of the car. Um, Ern is about to go off on his own way, and Al throws him a big wad of money and tells him that this is your 5%, as your management fee apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And he at this point he tells him he says you did good, and I thought that was worth noting that this is one of the few times that we actually see Al saying something really kind and supportive of Ern because Al can be really pretty harsh and negative. Like even earlier in this scene, he accused Ern of being a party pooper or whatever the phrase was, like sucking the fun out of things. But in this case, he's actually telling him, he's feeling sorry for Ern because he clearly sees that Ern is upset about this jacket. Uh, um, but anyway, then of course Darius is being weird again. He apparently ate two marijuana cigarettes, two blunts
Yeah, when the
during the
police
police
came by because
incident.
he didn't want them to catch him with
so
weed on him.
so he just wanders back into the apartment. Ern takes the money, puts it in his shoe, and heads off to Daddy Daycare, as Al puts it. In other words, he goes off to see Van and Lottie. And in the next scene, we see Ern serving food to Van and Lottie, and everyone looks happy. There's a knock at the door. The neighbor Justin, aka Swift, drops off a key to Ern, who is now visibly relieved. And apparently, this is what Ern has been looking for. It's kind of anticlimactic. It's just like, oh, I guess this is what he was looking for in that pocket. But we're still left wondering what's the big deal about this key.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Justin, uh, he's kind of ogling Van, who's relaxing on the couch, and asking about potentially dating her. Van asks, or he basically leaves and he just opens the next door. Apparently, he's the next door neighbor that Ern entrusted with this key, sort of, and he apparently just forgot. He must have been drunk or something. But this guy had the key all
Mm-hmm.
along, and just handed it over to Ern, and then goes back into his apartment. And then we have this nice exchange between Van and Ern. Van asks Ern about what happened last night. He asked him if he got wasted, and Ern is kind of being a little coy. He's like, yeah, kind of. Uh, and then Ern produces the cash and says, "This is the thing that we always need," like you said before, which is it was kind of a clever line. Uh, uh, Van jokingly asks if he's a drug dealer now, like where did he come up with the money? And Ern just keeps a straight face, which fools Van into thinking that indeed he is a drug dealer. But Ern quickly cracks a smile, and there's like a comic relief. Uh, and Van sort of sardonically says, "I hate you," but then genuinely adds, "You're a good daddy, though." So this is another very positive acknowledgement of Earn. So it kind of feels like we're ending the episode and in fact ending the whole season on an up note. Earn's getting a little love from Al. He's getting some love from Van. Um, Van actually invites him to stay, uh, but they separate. He leaves the apartment on foot, and then in the final scene, we the importance of the key is revealed. So
Mm-hmm.
he's walking off with his headphones on and some hip hop music in his ears, uh, and he approaches this garage, and we hear the sound of thunder in the sky, which is maybe some sort of has some sort of relevance, or
The thunder like cuts off the song, I think.
it's some
Like
sort of
I,
premonition
I
or
wish I
something.
wrote it down because it was an excellent song. I'm gonna have to go back and like put it on my Spotify
Oh, I
playlist.
wrote
But
down the song
oh yeah,
is "Elevator" by Outkast.
nice.
I,
Okay, yeah.
I had the subtitles on, so
Hmm.
I wrote that down. But
Yeah, no, I do remember it. It flashed that on screen, and I remember like thinking I got to make note of that, and then I didn't
yeah,
make note of it. But
but
but yeah.
we see Ern opening a storage garage unit, and we see a makeshift bed in the
Mhm.
garage. So this is Ern's residence, at least temporarily. Now he's living in a garage. So he lays down on this makeshift bed with his headphones on, listening to this music, and the lyrics are describing. Uh, I wrote down unending poverty. So there's some lyrics about somebody living check to check,
Yep.
and it ends with some lyrics like this ain't going. What I say? This ain't going to stop. So we're just going to continue. And
Mhm.
the last thing we see is Ern pulling the remaining two $100 bills out of his shoe, and he just looks at them, and then he turns the lights out on season one, and that's kind of where we're left. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it's kind of a depressing ending. You kind of feel like, oh, this season is coming to a nice end for Ern. At least he's getting some love from his friends, but we're left with the realization that he's still in this state of poverty and that he's actually
Yeah,
living in a
yeah.
garage.
I
So
think that's the what I find interesting is that what I find interesting is that Van very explicitly says, you can stay at my place. And Ern says, no, that's okay. And she's like, you sure? And he's like, yeah. And then he goes and voluntarily chooses to sleep in this storage
mm-hmm.
garage, right?
Yeah,
He's just made a bunch of money, for his standards, and he seems to be in good standings with his, what seems to at this point be girlfriend. They've in the past episode they kind of rekindled some of their romance, it seemed like, and now they're seem to be pretty stable and happy with one another. And so like you said, it seems like it's ending off on a pretty positive note where Ern's life is really on an upswing. um and so I feel, and also just by virtue of this being kind of the last moments of the season, that I feel like there's got to be, I'm really trying to do pretzels in my head, uh, or I'm doing mental gymnastics, trying to figure out, why did Ern turn down
mm,
that a night like on a real bed, um, and I'll be honest, I still haven't completely figured it out.
yeah, it's
I
a good
think,
point. I don't think there was a real good reason to the viewer to
yeah,
understand
I
that.
definitely think that part of this is to communicate to the viewer is that even a great victory, in the perspective of Ern, in the perspective of somebody in his situation, he's still poor.
Yeah,
Even if he made a couple $1,000s or something, like let's assume he made like, I don't know, a few $1,000s from that 5% that Al gave him. That's still, in the grand scheme of things, not that much money.
right.
Like you can always like take money and invest it and turn it into more money, but that's a lot of that's effort and takes time, and he's busy. And like I said, this whole episode I think is mostly about showing how much like these characters have going on in their lives and how busy they constantly are, and just like how busy and that kind of stuff like everybody around them is. And so like it's a small victory. Like, it can seem like a big victory, but it's really a small victory when like you zoom out and see the full scale of things and the position that these characters are actually in socioeconomically.
Maybe it was just meant to be Ern's pride. You know,
That was the other thing I was
he
thinking, is that it
he
could
paid
be
her
that.
off, and he's
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna make it on my own kind of
Yeah,
attitude.
that was the other thing I was thinking, is that he really desperately does not want to in any way feel like he's accepting help. Um, I guess now that I'm kind of like saying it out loud, it could be that now that he's seeing some success from this, from his career choice, he feels like, okay, well, now that I'm, able to start providing for my, something of a family, I can't rely on them whatsoever. Like, he was only doing so in the past because he absolutely needed to. And now that he feels like, well, I don't absolutely need to. I'm not literally homeless. I do at least have my storage garage and this, a few $100s, that now he, after having just that slimmest amount of like above absolute poverty threshold, that he feels like he can't accept help from anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the viewer is left to wonder if he
Yeah.
had gone to Van's apartment that night without any cash in his pocket, would he have stayed the night at her house?
Right.
Or, I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question.
but he was, I mean, he obviously had
It
been
seems like the kind
saying,
of, I mean, yeah, realistically, it seems like he probably would have made plan. Like, he didn't know he was going to be getting that money
yeah,
from Al beforehand. And he probably would have told Van, hey, I'm dropping by. But
yeah.
no, I get what you're talking about. Yeah.
So, so yeah, there's some interesting relationship issues that are sort of still hanging out there at the end of season one. I definitely could see that, the creators of the show, they did end it in a way that was kind of consistent with the theme of the season, which was
Hmm.
Ern's poverty and the struggling uh, artist, paper boy, and that culture. So it was all consistent in that regards. But it is. I would be interesting to do a little more homework to find out. Did they shoot season two before they decided if if this episode was going to be the finale for season one? Did they
Yep.
plan to end it on this down note, and then come back in season two with some strong episodes, or did they uh, did
Were
they
they
shoot
prepared for this to
episode
be the
two
final?
after this one aired?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, when it comes to like season finales, I feel, I'm not a showrunner, obviously, but I feel like it only makes sense for a show to, at the very least, be prepared for the final episode or the final act, if it's a movie or something, to be the ending
Hmm.
of that story, because there is always the possibility that the show might just bomb and
Right.
it won't get any viewers, and then the network is definitely going to drop it and not give you the chance to get a second season.
Hmm.
So I think that they're definitely, and then also just, probably knowing that some viewers wouldn't come around for season two, even if they were all psyched about season one, like, given the amount of time that has to take place between seasons of a show, people are just naturally going to, fall off. And like I said, people don't really start from season 2, 3, or 4, so.
Is it possible to find like the ratings of these shows, or like how many
Yeah,
people?
certainly. You could probably find it on the Wikipedia page. Honestly, I've just been too lazy to look it up.
We should
Probably.
do that. Like, it'd be
Yeah,
interesting to know if the popularity has
yeah. I
increased
think I will.
with each season being released, because the next season's about to drop, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's already promotional material out for it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, when that happens, we'll be around, sure to cover it. And I think for now, that's gonna wrap up season 1 of AtlantaCast.
All right. Yeah, I think we kept this one a little bit shorter than the
Yeah.
previous ones. And,
All right. Well,
Let's have a strong season 2, and
Absolutely, yeah. I'm excited for it.
let's like and
So yeah.
subscribe and all that good stuff.
Yep. Yeah, remember to do all that YouTube stuff. It's not just meaningless buttons. It actually does encourage the platform to show our content to new faces, new ears, and we'd greatly appreciate it. But, won't harp on that for too long. Just like to thank you guys for listening as long as you have, and we'll see you in season 2.
Okay.
Have a good one.